So there will be a short presentation by ACCA. I'm just waiting for them. They have requested about 10-15 minutes. So then I will begin my lecture. I don't know whether they're coming or not, but anyhow, I have promised them that I will be giving them the first 10 or 15 minutes of the class, so just wait for them to come. Okay. So just basically what we're going to talk about in the class today would be about directors' remuneration. In the last lecture, we have already spoken about the main board subcommittees, which is the nomination committee, the remuneration committee, and the audit committee. Okay, these are the three important board subcommittees. So make sure you revise all these areas, these topics, and the board subcommittees, because this is a very important part of corporate governance. Okay, all companies, listed companies in particular, should have all these committees. This all as part and parcel of accountability and transparency. Okay. So when you revise, focus on these three main committees, board subcommittees, which is the nomination committee, the remuneration committee, and then the audit committee. Okay, audit committee in particular is very important because they are in charge of the audit matters, anything to do with audit, risk, internal control, and so on, will be monitored by the audit committee. Okay, so keep in mind these are the three important board subcommittees. We have already covered them in previous lectures. So today basically we'll be looking at another aspect, which is the relationship between directors' remuneration. The directors' remuneration is a very contentious area in corporate governance. When I say contentious, what do I mean? Meaning this is a very controversial area. A lot of people are making comments about this, especially if the company is not performing well, and then they feel that the directors are being paid too much. Then this way you have all sort of negative comments coming out on social media. Company is not performing, however, the directors and board members are still getting their remuneration, their perks, and etc. etc. So this creates a lot of resentment and unhappiness. And these days, people, you don't have to read into the main media anymore, the mainstream media. They just resort to the social media to voice out their discontent. Okay, so that's what we'll be focusing on today. As I said before, I'm just waiting for the ACCA people to come. If they don't, then I will proceed with my lecture. So just bear with me. Okay, all right. I've been told to start the class first. Okay, so in case they come, I will have to stop my class. Okay, I will start my lecture now. So could I have a quick indication in the that you can hear me? So now today I'm going to look at directors' performance and remuneration. As I've said before, this is a very contentious area, okay, because a lot of issues being generated about this matter, okay. So let's see what are the issues. So basically, we need to be aware of the main features of the directors' remuneration debate, okay. So what are the main features of the directors' remuneration debate? So why is it so contentious? Why there's a lot of debate about this? Okay. Then also we also need to know what are the key elements of the directors' remuneration. As I said, if you go to the annual report in the directors' report section, you will have all these details there. So what is the makeup of their remuneration, their salary, their allowances, their other perks and benefits in kind. So the whole package. Okay, when we're talking about the director's remuneration, we are talking about the whole package. Okay, so what are the elements of the director's remuneration? And then also we need to look at the role of the remuneration committee in setting director's remuneration. We saw this in the previous lectures. So this is one of the board subcommittees, important board subcommittees, which is responsible for setting directors remuneration. So these are the basically what we will be covering in class today. Okay, and then also we need to understand the different measures that can be used to link directors remuneration with performance. So how can we link the directors remuneration with performance so that the company is not overpaying them, meaning that their remuneration is pegged to performance. So if they do well, then they will be paid accordingly. If they don't do well, then like every other person who is working, they have to get a salary card or something like that. Okay. So what are the ways that we can use to link directors' remuneration with the performance of the company? And also we need to know what are the disclosure requirements for directors' remuneration. So this is something that the public and the stakeholders are interested to know. Okay, so you need to be transparent about this. So what are you paying the directors? How much are you paying them for their salary, or their transport allowance, their meeting allowance, their entertainment allowance, their driver allowance, housing allowance, golf club allowance, etc., etc. As I said, it's the whole package. Okay, directors' remuneration. And then also we need to be aware of the different ways of evaluating directors. What are the possible ways of evaluating the directors, so that we're in a position to make some kind of a comment that they are being paid what they deserve to get, or they are being overpaid or underpaid, or those kind of comments. So we need to know how can we evaluate their performance. My first question would be, how do you perceive the current discussion regarding executive remuneration, and why is it happening? So, there's a lot of discussion and debate about executive remuneration. Okay, like I just said, if you go and read up the Edge newspaper, for the last few days, in fact, they've been talking about Serba Dynamic. This company has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. So how do you perceive the current discussion regarding executive remuneration, and why is it happening? Okay, so this is something for you to think about. I'll come back to you later with this question. So I would like you all to think about this in the meantime. How do you perceive the current discussion regarding executive remuneration, and why is this happening? Okay, and then as some background, in recent years, the remuneration of senior executives has received considerable attention. Okay, I mean, this is a worldwide thing, not just in Malaysia. Remuneration of senior executives has received a lot of attention. Now, what's the concern? What is the main concern is related to the payments which are made regardless of past performance or success. So this is what I've just been talking about, that they are being paid very well, okay, regardless of how well the company is doing. They are getting their allowances, their perks and benefits in kind, and so on and so forth. So a lot of people, especially now that most people are very active in social media, they are raising their concerns and making their opinions about this matter. Now, some boards and executives have taken higher risks when their remuneration has been based on short-term financial performance. So this is another area that I've discussed about earlier. This mismatch here. There's a mismatch between remuneration and the risk profile. Now, when the company rewards, especially for listed companies, okay, their reporting window is every 3 months. They have to prepare their quarterly reports. Okay, every 3 months they have to prepare their quarterly reports, and therefore what happens is that because they are being assessed on their performance in a quarterly kind of manner, so they tend to take higher risks. This is more relevant for listed companies. Okay, since they have to do quarterly reporting, meaning they have to prepare their reports every 3 months. So when they are being judged on their performance, which is based on the quarterly reports, so in order to fulfill these expectations of their shareholders and other stakeholders, they have started taking higher risks. Okay, they started taking higher risks, especially the executives. Remember, there are two players here. One is the board of directors, who are responsible for the strategic matters of the company, and the executives led by the CEO, who are responsible for operational matters. So when the CEO and his team of senior management, their remuneration and reward is based on short-term financial performance, they will take higher risks. It's quite natural. Okay, if I'm going to be judged on my performance on a quarterly basis, then I'm going to take risks, higher risks. The board members, they might be having a longer term view of the company. They might be looking at the company from the longer term perspective. So this is where sometimes the clash can occur. Now, some jurisdictions mandate the disclosure of executive remuneration. Okay, as far as I know, in Malaysia, we only require disclosure of CEO remuneration. I'm not sure if the CFO, the COO, CTO, CDO, all the senior management remuneration is being disclosed at present in the annual report. But there are some jurisdictions in other countries, they also require to disclose executive remuneration, meaning not just the board members' remuneration, but also the senior management's remuneration. So all of these are best practice, part and parcel of accountability and transparency. Okay, and then there are some best practice guidance which recommends boards to institute policies to recoup excessive performance-based remuneration. This is another issue. Okay, we have seen this in some of the case studies that we did in the tutorial class. Okay, when directors, I think one of the thing that we looked at was Marks and Spencer. Remember the case of Marks and Spencer, where the departing directors, board members were given handsome payoff, even though the company was not doing well. Okay, so now companies best practice are looking at how they can recover or get back the money that they have paid, excessive amounts paid, when the performance didn't match that remuneration. Okay, so as you can see, that the debate on executive remuneration is very complex. Lots of issues involved in this, but if I want to summarize this thing, it's basically got to do with the fact that the remuneration of the board members, senior management, first issue is there's no tie, there's no connection between the performance and their remuneration. So sometimes, and not sometimes, quite often, you find the companies are still paying their board members and senior executives very highly, even though the company has not been performing that well. Okay, as we saw in the case of the Enron, is one of those cases where they had made handsome payouts to their senior members of the management, okay, the CEO, CFO, and so on, even though the company was actually not doing well, and it became one of the major corporate scandals. And I think closer to home, we also have some of these issues. If you, for example, if you look at the case of Serba Dynamic, which has been making the headlines for the last few days, this is another issue: lack of transparency, lack of accountability, and totally ignoring the minority interests when making their decisions. Okay, so there's been a lot of debate about this. So basically, the debate on this matter is quite complex. Okay, so debates about remuneration and fairness. Excessive remuneration is an issue of international concern. It's not just a concern in Malaysia, but it's also a concern throughout the world. Excessive remuneration. Now, you cannot blame the shareholders or the other stakeholders for being concerned with this matter, because at the end of the day, all the payouts are coming out from companies' funds, companies' money. Okay, so keep in mind at the end of the day, company funds, company money actually belongs to the shareholders. Okay, so at the end of the day, the boards are answerable to the shareholders. If they are paying excessive amounts, which is not reflected in company's performance, then it's quite natural that people are not going to be happy, and then they will be discontented, unhappy, and these days there are lots of avenues for them to express their unhappiness. Okay, not like in the past, we only had mainstream media, and nowadays we've got social media. I mean, talk about Instagram, talk about Twitter, talk about Facebook, and so on and so forth. If people are not happy, they just go there and let out their grievances. Okay, it is happening currently quite often. And then payments for past and future performance and motivation. Okay, so the basic issue is company is paying handsomely. It does not seem to be reflected in the performance of the company. Okay, so basically they are rewarding themselves. They are rewarding themselves. Okay, so this is an issue which is quite hot issue, okay, being discussed in many media, especially social media, where a lot of people are not happy, especially the stakeholders are not happy. The non-executive directors, they play a very important role in corporate governance. These are people who don't have a direct stake or direct interest in the company. They are there, they are appointed to the board to act as a watchdog to take care of the interests of the minority shareholders. Okay, in some cases they are not playing their role. Okay, maybe because they feel this is beholden, they are beholden to the people who appointed them. So they feel they owe their position to these people, and therefore they are reluctant to speak up. Okay, so this is another issue. The INETs, independent non-executive directors, are not playing their role effectively. Okay, this is one of the reasons why many companies have collapsed, because when they do the post-mortem, the analysis, it is because the INETs are there just for window dressing. They are not really playing their role. Okay, then the other group is the executive directors and senior executives. And then you have a performance-based remuneration. So the suggestion is now to move towards performance-based remuneration. So remuneration which is tied to performance. Remuneration which is tied to performance. And also disclosure. Disclosure is very important in corporate governance. We have spoken about this at length. So meaning that you have to be transparent about how much you are paying. Break it down. Okay, break it down. If you just go to the website of Bursa Malaysia and download the annual reports of the top companies in the Bursa Malaysia FTSE 100 index, just take a sample of companies from there and download the annual reports. Go to the section called the Directors Report section, and then you can see the details about directors' remuneration, the names of the directors, how much they are being paid, the whole package. You will get the details there. Okay, and then the last aspect is about tightening rules regarding remuneration. So basically, a lot of discussion and debate is about tying the remuneration to performance. Meaning, if the performance does not match the remuneration that they are getting, then we need to look at, can we recoup or take back some of the money that was paid because they did not perform. I can't remember which year it was, but it was quite recent, in the last 2-3 years or so. There was an issue with a company called FGV, Felda Global Ventures, okay, where the shareholders were not happy and they called for an EGM. EGM stands for Extraordinary General Meeting. Okay, they did not want to wait for the next AGM because they were not happy. Share price was falling. Okay, they were not getting their dividends, and yet they heard the directors are being rewarded handsomely. Year in, year out, they keep getting their whatever they're getting. Okay, but on the other hand, the company was not performing, and they were not happy about it, and so they get together, and then they had a quorum. When they had the quorum, they instructed the company secretary, okay, we have the numbers, we want to call for an EGM. And during the EGM, which was very heated, okay, EGM, you can just Google and type FGV, Felda Global Ventures, and you will see what the discussion was all about. Basically, the discussion was about company performance. Company was not performing well, but yet the board members, the senior management, kept getting their remuneration. Okay, meaning to say that their remuneration was not based on performance. Regardless of how this company FGV was performing, they kept getting their perks, their directors' fees and other allowances and so on and so forth. So these are some of the concerns among the stakeholders. Okay, so there's a lot of debate about this. That's why I just started this lecture by saying directors' remuneration is a contentious issue. There's a lot of discussion about this in various media. Okay, and as I've just said, if you go to the publication called The Edge, which is one of the leading business publications in Malaysia, if you go to The Edge, just type there Edge, and then the keyword searching, you can use your Google and search, type this company called Serba Dynamic. You see every other day there has been an issue about some corporate governance matter, okay, including the director's remuneration. So I think I will end here for now, and then we go and let's go and see some whether there are any questions in the chat area, okay, about this topic. As I said, this is a important area in corporate governance, okay. So are there any questions regarding this matter? Okay, put your question in the chat area. I'll try and answer. Are there any questions regarding this corporate governance, especially directors' remuneration? Okay, in the meantime, I will just go to camps and get your attendance so that I will focus on my lecture after this, and in case I forget. Okay, just do your attendance. In the meantime, I'm actually waiting for ACCA. If they don't come, then I will continue my lecture. Can you quickly do your attendance? Okay, it seems like there's no question. All right. I'll probably wait for another 2-3 minutes. In the meantime, like I said, can you quickly take your attendance? Okay, as I've said, I've been informed that they might be coming, so I'll just continue my lecture. In case they come, then I will let them do their presentation. Okay, I will continue and go back to my slides. So please do your attendance. I don't think I'm going to be looking at that again. All right. So now we're looking at this issue of debates about remuneration and fairness. Okay, so as I said, this is not just a concern in Malaysia, it's also an international concern. Excessive remuneration is an international concern. So payments are being made for past performance, for future performance. Okay, non-executive directors, INETs, not doing their job as they were supposed to do, and executive directors and senior executives being handsomely rewarded when people are questioning company, as I just given an example of FGV Global Ventures, Malaysian company. Okay, please go and Google and read it up. There was a 2-3 years ago, the shareholders were very unhappy. They called for the extraordinary GM, and they even made a suggestion to cut the salaries and other perks of the board members. They were so angry. Okay, and then performance-based remuneration, meaning that it must be tied to performance. Okay, not just arbitrarily fix the what you call the salary and other perks. Okay, and it is not matched by performance. Company is either stagnating or declining. All of this is part and parcel of a best practice in corporate governance: disclosure, transparency, remuneration. So suggestions to tighten the rules regarding remuneration. So this is a very important aspect of corporate governance. So this matter of directors' remuneration is directly coming under the remuneration committee. Okay, remuneration committee, which we saw in the last lecture, is one of the important board subcommittees, together with the nomination committee and the audit committee. So this is from the UK Corporate Governance Code. It's recommending that companies should establish a formal, meaning a written policy, okay, formal policy, and also it must be transparent. It must be transparent for developing policy on executive remuneration and for fixing the remuneration packages of individual directors. So how is this? This is from the UK Corporate Governance Code. Okay, it is taken from the UK Corporate Governance Code. So in practice, this normally results in the appointment of a remuneration committee. Okay, yesterday I've already uploaded the latest version of the code, Malaysian code. You can please go to the code on the times and read up the part on the remuneration committee. Okay, so Malaysian code on corporate governance also talks about directors' remuneration. Okay, so this is, as I'm in one of the earlier slides mentioned, this is an international issue. Not in Malaysia only. This is an issue in the US, in Australia, in Canada, UK, New Zealand, everywhere. Okay, so the basic issue is this is what the directors are being paid. Okay, does what they are being paid match the company's performance? Sometimes you see the company performance over time seems to be declining, share value is falling, and they're not able to maintain their dividend payout. But still, when you go and check the director's remuneration, the director's report, they are still being paid what they are getting. No deduction what they are getting. Okay, so this of course creates unhappiness and resentment amongst the stakeholders, particularly the minority shareholders, because in many companies they don't have a say. They don't have a say, so that's why they're not happy. Okay, I park my money in this company, I put my investment in here, and this is what's happening in this company, and I'm not happy about it, and yet I can't do anything about it. Company is hijacked or being controlled by a close-knit group of people, okay, who are making the decisions. Many times or oftentimes they're making decisions which is in their own self-interest, not in the best interest of the company, particularly the minority shareholders. So that's why this whole debate is taking place, and that is why there's a lot of unhappiness. Okay, and these days, you know, with social media very active, you can't hide it anymore. You cannot hide it anymore. You cannot sweep it under the carpet. Okay, so when people are not happy, they will take to social media and let out and give vent to their feelings. They will vent out their feelings, okay, about their unhappiness. So the recommendation is the remuneration committee should be comprised of at least 3, minimum 3, for smaller companies 2, INETs. Okay, what is the rationale for this? Why they're making this suggestion? INET is there on the board to act in the best interest of the minority shareholders, to look after the interests of the company, to act as a watchdog. The problem usually arises when the INETs are not doing their job. As I've just said just now, they feel beholden. They feel beholden to the people who appointed them. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. Okay, unfortunately, in the real world, it's happening a lot. The INETs, sometimes they're just like dead wood. They're sitting there, attending board meeting, collecting their director's allowance, their meeting allowance, travel allowance, whatever allowance, and then they're not really doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, so that's why the remuneration committee, the best practice recommendation is there should be at least 3 members. If a company is small, at least 2 who are INET, independent non-executive directors. And then on top of that, the chair the company chairman, the chairman of the company, okay, the whole company, the chairman of the company. It says here he or she can be a member of remuneration committee. Can, but cannot chair the meeting. Cannot chair the meeting. Just be an ordinary member only. Just be an ordinary member of the remuneration committee. Because the chairman or chairwoman or chairperson is very important. When there is a tie, meaning two are for and two are against, so he or she will have the deciding vote. So very important role played by the chairperson. So the recommendation from the corporate governance code is that the company chairman, okay, if he insists I want to be in this remuneration committee, I want to be a member, okay, can, but he cannot chair the remuneration committee meetings. He can be just an ordinary member. Okay, so basically all of these steps are being taken to safeguard the independence of this remuneration committee, so that when they make decisions, they are making decisions in the best interest of the company and not in their own self-interest. This is an issue. This is a debate going on. Sometimes, if the remuneration committee is not sufficiently independent, they will decide on the remuneration for themselves. They will decide to reward themselves highly, even though it is not supported or matched by the company's performance. Okay, so these are some of the debates and arguments and discussions going on in the media about this issue, this sensitive issue, this contentious issue of board remuneration. You need to be aware, why is this a contentious issue? So as I've just said, when we talk about directors' remuneration, it's not just salary only, okay, it's the whole package. It varies from company to company, okay. There is no one standard model for directors' remuneration, but basically these are some of the things that make up the director's remuneration. The basic salary. The basic salary over the term of the contract depends on the size of the company, the industry sector, experience, and comparative base salary in other companies. So when the remuneration committee sets the basic salary, they will look at the practice in other companies, especially in their own sector. For example, if this company that I'm talking about right now is in the plantation sector, okay, so when they are deciding on their board members' remuneration, they will look at the practice in other big companies in the plantation sector. For example, if we're talking about FGV, which is one of which used to be one of the biggest plantation companies in Malaysia. I say used to be. Maybe they will want to compare with Guthrie, or compare with Sime Darby, and so on. So these are the big players in the plantation sector. So that is how they will decide, okay, what is going to be the base salary, and then bonus. So bonus must be linked to the key performance indicators. Performance basically. So the company will decide, okay, these are the expectations. If you match this expectation, if you meet these expectations, then you can expect a bonus. Stock options. This is very attractive. This is what many board members, this is where they really get the benefit, is they get their right to buy shares at a specified exercise price over a specified time period. This is called a stock option. Now, if you go and read up the Enron case study, one of the big scandal, this is where the directors abuse their position, okay, to reward themselves with very handsome stock options. Okay, go and read up Enron again. Okay, read up the details of this case study. Why this company went under? Why this company collapsed? Because they rewarded their directors very handsomely by giving them these stock options. Stock option whereby they can buy shares at a specified price. The price is already fixed for them. Within this time period, they can buy. So meaning that it is at a discount to market price. Okay, they are not going to buy at market price like everybody else. They are going to buy at a discounted price. And restricted share plans or stock grants. Then these are shares awarded with limits on transferability for a set time period and for meeting various KPIs. So again, this is another reward, so-called reward scheme. So you're giving it to the board members, but of course you say that you cannot transfer within this time to anybody else. You have to hang on to it. Okay, you have to hang on to it. Again, all of this is part and parcel of their remuneration. Okay, pension, benefits in kind, like they get a company car, driver, healthcare, golf club membership. As you know, some of these exclusive golf clubs in KL, membership, yearly membership can cost hundreds of thousands. You don't believe me? Go and check it out. Okay. So all of this comprises the director's remuneration, the big package. Okay. So now these are some of the suggestions to tie the remuneration to the performance. What are some of the criteria that is being suggested? These are some of the criteria that is being suggested that we tie this performance criteria to the remuneration so that the remuneration and the performance matches one another. So there's no issue of overpayment, that we are overpaying the directors. Okay, I very rarely heard about underpayment. People don't make noise. Most of the time, the noise is coming about because of overpayment. The feeling that the stakeholders have that the directors are not performing and yet they are receiving a very handsome remuneration. So one of the suggestions is tie it to the shareholders' returns, share price. Okay, how is the share price movement? Is it constant? Is it consistent? Is it moving up or moving down? Profit-based measures, you can have ROCE, return on capital employed, return on assets, return on equity. There are so many measures that you can use, or you can use profit-based measures. Okay, last year we had achieved a net profit after tax of 10 million. So for the next coming year, we set you a target of 15 million, for example. Okay, that means it's based on profit-based measure. Or it could be based on return on capital employed. For example, for the last few years, we have been enjoying a return on capital of 8%, 9%, 10%. So for the future, we expect you to have a return of 12%, 15%, 25%, whatever. So this is basically the idea to tie the remuneration to performance, and then the earnings per share. This is another metric that they use, EPS. They call it EPS. So closely tied to EPS is another metric called PE ratio. The PE ratio. I'm sure you have studied all these things in your financial reporting in the previous semester. So I don't want to go into the details of this, but basically all of these are performance criteria. Okay, performance criteria to make sure that directors' remuneration is tied to performance. Tied to performance. So no issue of they are being paid handsomely, being paid well, even though the company is not performing. And another suggestion is evaluate directors individually, not as a board, not as a collective. Currently, the practice is most companies, they evaluate their board as a collective, in aggregate. They don't evaluate individual board members. So the suggestion is, okay, maybe we should look at evaluating individual board members instead of looking at the whole board. Okay, it may be some board members are very industrious, very hardworking, they're doing their job, but the company is being pulled down by a few of the board members who are what they call deadwood. Deadwood meaning they just come for meeting, they don't participate, they don't have any input, they don't give any feedback, they just come to collect their meeting allowance, director's allowance, transport allowance, etc., etc. So the one of the criteria being looked at is to tie the remuneration to the individual's director's performance. Okay, so quoted companies. Okay, quoted companies. This is another term for listed companies. Okay, you can either call it a quoted company or a listed company. They must publish a detailed report on directors' pay as part of their annual reporting cycle. Okay, so like I just said just now, you can go to the website of Bursa Malaysia. You can just download the annual report of those companies which are in the Bursa Malaysia FTSE 100 index, and go to the back, the directors report section, and you can see the detailed report on directors pay. This is a requirement, okay, under the Malaysian Corporate Governance Code, and this report must be approved by the full board of directors. And then a graph of the company's total shareholder returns over the last 5 years. Our company's returns over the last 5 years against a comparator company, meaning against another company in the same industry, must be published in the remuneration committee report. Just to tell the stakeholders, okay, this is how we are performing, and this is how our competitor is performing. Okay, so at least the shareholders, when they see the report, they can see, oh, our company is performing like this. The other company who's our close competitor, they are performing like this. We are better than them, or we're equal to them, or we're not as good as them. So it's all of this is part and parcel of accountability and transparency. Okay, all this is what they call best practice in corporate governance. And then in the as I mentioned in last week's lecture, you can have consultants to help you when deciding on remuneration, because you must peg the remuneration. You cannot pay too much. You want the best. You want best people. You must pay what the market pays. So if you don't have experts about this matter, you can appoint an HR consultant, people who are specialists in this area. You can appoint them to give you advice on directors' remuneration. Okay, these are the HR consultants. So the names of the consultants who you appointed must be disclosed, so that there's transparency. Make sure they are appointed independently, not because they are your good friend, your best friend, or whatever. You play golf together, and then they just be whitewashed for window dressing. Okay, so in the name of transparency and accountability, who are the consultants who gave you the feedback on this remuneration? Who give you the feedback? That information also must be disclosed. How they were appointed? Were they appointed independently? What was the cost that they charge for providing the services to the company? So all of this, it looks very tedious and tiresome, but it is all part and parcel of best practice in corporate governance. Okay, coming back again and again to these two ideas of transparency and accountability, very important for companies' best practice. Best practice in corporate governance, these are the two aspects: accountability and transparency. Okay. And then now you have, on top of that, companies must hold a shareholder vote on directors' remuneration at each AGM. Okay, you must get back to the shareholders, and they will vote. You just tell them, this is the remuneration committee's report. This is their suggestion. This is their recommendation. This is the remuneration that they suggested. Okay, then the shareholders must vote on it. This is called say on pay. The shareholders want to have a say on pay. If they're not happy, okay, like for example, as I mentioned just now, in the case of FGV, Felda Global Ventures, okay, they're not happy. Every year, company directors are getting the same remuneration or higher remuneration, but the share price is going down, the dividends are declining, you know, so they're not happy. So that's why they call for the EGM. So now this has become an accepted practice. Shareholders want to have a say on pay. They want to have a say on pay. Okay. So this is all part and parcel of best practice in corporate governance. Okay. You cannot fix all this remuneration in silence, in secrecy. We want to know, and we want to have a say on this. Put it to vote. If we don't like it, we don't support it. Okay. This is called say on pay. Okay, so this is all part and parcel of remuneration reporting regulations. So for UK quoted companies, which is listed companies in the UK, they have to prepare the remuneration report giving details of any substantial changes to directors' remuneration made during the financial year and why they were made. So if, for example, you give suddenly this year you give a big jump of 20,000 ringgit to a particular director. Okay, you need to justify. You need to justify why suddenly you check up the director's remuneration by 20k or 50k or whatever. Okay, so all of this is what they call a forward-looking directors remuneration policy. Okay, so meaning this policy, you need to put it to the shareholders to debate it and for their approval. So this is what they call say on pay. The shareholders want to have a say on pay. Okay, so you have to have an annual report showing how the remuneration policy has been implemented, giving the full details of actual payments made to each director, how much you paid each director, and also the payments made for loss of office in the financial year. Meaning if you have a departing director or directors who have completed their term and they are not, and their contract is not being renewed. Okay, so many companies have what they call a handsome payout, okay, to the directors for their service. So those details they want to know. Okay, you don't do it in secrecy. Okay, the director, one director or two directors, maybe they are finishing their term and they are leaving. Okay, so you want to reward them for their past services. Well, no issue with that, but be transparent. What has been their contribution to the company and so on and so forth. So they have served the company loyally, and during this period to this period, when they serve on the board, company share price went up like this, return on capital went like this, return on equity, meaning all this supported by metrics, so that the shareholders know why they are being paid, what they are being paid. Okay, so it's not being done in secrecy. It's not like the directors are rewarding themselves. Okay, I scratch my back, you scratch my back. So all of these things are issues in corporate governance. Okay, now the annual remuneration report is subject to the annual advisory shareholder vote. Shareholders have a binding vote on remuneration policy, which has to be approved at least every 3 years. So basically, the shareholders have a binding vote, meaning if they don't agree with the remuneration policy, you cannot continue to pay this to the directors. They want to have a say. And you must put this to them once every 3 years. Okay, again, this is all part and parcel of best practice. Shareholders want to be sure you are not simply rewarding directors who are not performing. You are not just rewarding your friends with what they call you scratch my back, I scratch your back. Not that kind of thing. It has to be tied to performance, and they want to know. It has to be transparent. Bring it to the AGM, present it to them, and then they will vote on it. If they support it, well and good. If they don't, then you have to bring back to the remuneration committee again and discuss what part of it they don't like, what part of it they want you to change. Okay, so again, this is all best practice in corporate governance. So coming to the last slide. So what is the key takeaway from today's lecture? What is the key takeaway? As I've been saying from the very beginning of the class, directors' remuneration should be tied to performance. Okay, whatever it is, this is the key principle. This is the main principle. Reward must be matched with performance. It cannot be based on emotion. Oh, he's my friend. He's been on the board for so long. A good friend. Okay, and that's not the criteria. It's not a matter of you stretch my back. Okay, when I retire, you make sure I get the same payout, I get the same bonus and things like that. It should be related to performance. That's the key takeaway. I hope I have made this point very clear to you. Directors' remuneration should be related to performance. So for the sake of transparency and to comply with the best practices, as per the MCCG, Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, these matters about remuneration should be decided by a remuneration committee, which is made up of at least 3 INEDs, independent non-executive directors. So why they have this requirement? To make sure that the people who are discussing about the director's remuneration are independent. They are not discussing their own remuneration. They are making the discussion based on what is in the best interest of the company. That's why they are appointed to the remuneration committee. Not to look out for their friends, okay? Not to make something for the friends, okay? and there should be a detailed disclosure. Okay, as I said, you can go to any company, go download the annual report, go to Bursa Malaysia website. If you want to see the best practice, you choose those companies which are in the FTSE 100 index. You go to the back of the annual report, there's a section called the director's report, and then you will see the detailed disclosure. What is the makeup? What is the makeup? Not just the basic salary. What are the perks? What are the allowances? What are the benefits in kind? All those details should be there. Okay, this is part and parcel of transparency. And the last point is say on pay. Say on pay meaning you need to bring these matters to the AGM. Get a vote on it from the shareholders. This is now the practice in many countries around the world. So remuneration committee can only suggest, can only recommend. So you have to bring it to the board has to bring it to the AGM and discuss with the shareholders and put it to vote. If they agree, well and good, it is passed. If they don't agree, if they say no, we're not happy, company is not performing, these people don't deserve what they are getting, this is not good, so you have to bring it back to remuneration committee, discuss again and modify and make a new proposal. Okay, so all of these discussions today are in relation to best practices in corporate governance on a very contentious area, which is the subject of directors' remuneration. Okay, why is it a contentious issue? Because as you can see, for many years, okay, across the world, it's not just a Malaysian issue. It's not just a Malaysian issue. Companies are not performing well, but the directors are still being rewarded handsomely. So now people are more conscious of their rights, okay, especially minority shareholders. So they start to make noise. When they make noise, then this gets the attention of regulators. In Malaysia, our regulator for listed companies, we have the Bursa Malaysia. We also have the Securities Commission of Malaysia. Okay, so they will take action on these matters, and they have been taking action on these matters. And like I said, if you have been following the recent developments for this company, which has been in the limelight, which has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, just go, you just type the word Edge online, it's a newspaper, business newspaper Malaysia, Edge, which is called EDG, Edge online, and type in the keyword Serba Dynamic. You will see a lot of information about this company coming out in the last few days. A lot of people are not happy, and therefore this coming into the limelight. Okay, coming to the limelight for the good reason is okay. Everybody's happy. The share price will go up. But coming into the limelight for the wrong reasons, that's when your company gets a bad name. And if you're a listed company, you know your stakeholders, your shareholders, you start thinking, do we still want to keep our investment in this company, or do we want to pull out our investment? And it becomes like the herd mentality. So if one big investor or an institutional investor pulls out their funds, okay, takes out their money saying that they're not confident with this company, then you will have what you call a multiplier effect, domino effect. In Malaysia, we have this what is called herd mentality. Herd mentality. So everybody will start pulling out, and in the end, you know what will happen to the share price. Okay. So with that, I've come to the end of the lecture. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask me, or put your